Okay, after sleep is in place, the next most important part to improving your health would be to get some basics of diet down and under control. So one of the fundamental things to think about with diet is not to get so over concerned with all the diets that are on the market, whether it be a diet that's higher in this certain macronutrient versus that one. There's many diets that will work for people, and a diet is a stimulus that your body will adapt to that you might often need to change. But there are certain fundamental principles within a diet as to what would make it nutritious for your body, regardless of what type of diet it is labeled as. And some of those fundamental pieces to the puzzle that we have to think about is, what are those nutrients really designed to do, and what do we need to get out of our diets in order for it to be nutritious? And one of the first things to think about with what we need to extract from that is, we need nutrients to detoxify. So the number one thing is, according to Dr. Sidney Baker, 80% of our body's resources is spent on detoxification, and 80% being a very conservative estimate of that, that's a lot of what our nutrients go towards. So in terms of diet, I would include supplements in that diet as well. But that'd be the first thing that we need to get out of our food in order for it to make ourselves healthy, is to get the nutrients that are going to act as detoxifiers for our system, and that give us conjugates to do those functions. The second principle of why we actually need the nutrients from our food is to repair damage to our cells and damage done to our DNA. So the second part to that is, basically fruit and vegetable matter provide certain compounds called polyphenols, and those plant phytonutrients are very, very needed for repairing the damage to the DNA and making sure that we are resistant to cancer, and making sure that our immune system functions properly and that cells get repaired. And it's estimated that our Paleolithic ancestors ate about 15 servings of vegetables a day. And most North Americans would fall far under and below that category. In these days, it's lucky to see people even eat a single serving of vegetables. So, and to keep in mind that back in those times, it was also a drastically less toxic environment than it is now. So now our requirements for these phytonutrients to repair the damage to our DNA would be a lot higher, because there is a lot more cellular damage. Even radiation from cell phones and electromagnetic frequencies cause lots and lots more cellular mutations and damage that we need to now recover from. So that'd be another point, is that we need a lot more fruit and vegetable matter in our diet. So, and everybody across the board can use that. If they can't get in their diet because it's unrealistic to eat 15 servings of vegetables a day, there are great phytonutrient supplements and greens plus powders that like paleo greens that are available as replacements for that to still provide those nutrients. And the third thing would be providing the resources to repair and regenerate tissue and functions of the body. So after the primary functions of the body, such as detoxification and repairing the immune system, are taken care of, what is left over can be now spent on additional things like anabolism, gaining muscle, losing body fat, etc. But always the most important things will be taken care of first. And those would be basically what we need nutrients for out of a diet. Another important concept to keep in mind when you're thinking about what is healthy for me is, every single person will do well off of a low insulin producing diet. So if the diet is spiking their blood sugar too much, insulin is a hormone that is it will basically send a signal to the cell to tell it to die quicker. So it's called apoptosis, and what happens is, if you reduce the amount of insulin in your diet, you can prolong the life of your cells by up to 50%. So for anybody who's concerned with anti-aging or aging slowly or just being as healthy as they possibly can, one of the things they want to do is to make sure that their diet is one that keeps the insulin production over a lifetime at a minimum. And those are the fundamental principles of what you would need to think about the nutrient side of things. And some of the fundamental habits now that you would need to incorporate before you start a diet would be, one, always do a food sensitivity test, because there are many foods that you may have eaten over your lifetime that your body is reacting to, and your immune system is reacting to, that can create inflammation in the body that might be causing you a lot of troubles. And it's a very common reason why people have a hard time losing weight, is they're just sensitive to the foods they eat. So it's the first thing to know is always have a test run. It's called a LEAP MRT test. Do the test and figure out what foods are your immune system reacting to, because those will always make inflammation worse, and if inflammation is worse, it'll create an opening and a doorway to any and all disease and disorder. And it could be simple foods, and it could be because maybe you ate the food too frequently, or it could have been because you had been drinking or taking aspirin on an empty stomach for a while, and the gut wall lining got faulty and food got through, then your immune system started attacking it. For a variety of reasons, you can develop food sensitivities and allergies to foods. So the first thing to rule out is, or to find out, is what foods are good for me. Once you have that list down, then the next thing is to eat every 3 hours. So eat a small meal every 3 hours, or a big meal if you're trying to gain weight, but basically make sure that the food interval is spaced out well so that you're not getting big drops in your blood sugar levels. That's going to force you to produce more cortisol to raise your blood sugar for you to function. So one of the biggest stressors on people is a big rise and fall in their blood sugar levels throughout the day, which leads to them getting adrenal fatigue and then weight gain as a result of that. So to avoid that, eat small meals about every 3 hours. Make sure there's adequate protein at every meal. Make sure there's good fats in every meal. So the types of fats you would get from nuts or flaxseed oil or walnut or fish oil is a necessity. And make sure you try to shoot for about 2 vegetables with every meal. And if that's unrealistic, there are the options of the Primal Greens powder. It's a phenomenal product, just simply because it's difficult to get in 15 servings of greens a day. And the last thing about fruit is a lot of North Americans can't handle a lot of fructose, and it causes something called glycation. So it's basically like sugar encrusting on a nerve or muscle. That can change over time when you get somebody's carnosine levels up to normal. But in the beginning, it's best to stick to about 1 to 3 servings of fruits a day, the ones that are low glycemic like berries. As somebody gets healthier and they get loaded up on the nutrients like carnosine that will break up that glycation, and their body's metabolism for fructose gets better, they can handle more. But in the beginning, it's best to minimize the fruit content, because that is a sugar too, and because it doesn't raise insulin, it can cause other problems, especially when somebody isn't as healthy as they should be to get in the beginning to get going. So those are the fundamental or universal principles that would make a diet healthy. Then how you would organize that in terms of the exact macronutrients that are needed for you personally would depend on other factors that we would have to look at in another article. Okay? Thanks.